Well, welcome to a very special episode of Best of Rivals podcast. The World Cup is over, but unfortunately we're not. We'll be here to stay. I'm sure not to your relief, but yeah, it's great to be joined again by my co-host, Ryan Stevenson, as we'll pick apart the bones of what was on the whole a successful 2026 World Cup, and then look forward to the Premier League season where the rivalry, I hope, continues and commences between the two greatest clubs in English football. So very much looking forward to that. Ryan, good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, all good. I mean, we're a bit delayed on our final episode of the World Cup, but certainly after the England-Argentina game, it took me a good 2 days to even want to start talking about and dissecting that. Massively disappointed, but yeah, all in all, it was a fantastic World Cup, wasn't it? Had lots of exciting games, big players turning up, and that's really what you want from a World Cup.
Agree. And it's just such a shame because that final could have been, I think, Spain against England. I don't think we would have won, to be fair, but it would have been a far better final than it was with Argentina just putting everyone behind the ball. Yeah, there's niggly little tackles, not what you'd want really at all. And I haven't spoken to anyone who enjoyed watching that, even Spanish fans, quite frankly. It's just, for me, it's a real shame, everything that happened with Tuchel, frankly. And it's something that I'm sure we'll get onto maybe even now, frankly. But for me, Ryan, we have that game in the palm of our hands and we contrived to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory that I thought only Gareth Southgate could do. But now he has a rival who's possibly even better at doing that in Thomas Tuchel. So I'm very vehemently of the camp of Tuchel out. And I'll articulate many reasons why as we continue. How are you sort of sitting a week and a half on from it?
Yeah, obviously massively disappointed. We were so close, really, weren't we? And to be fair, for large parts of that game, we seemed at least in control, or at least Argentina weren't the threat that we were probably fearing. So it did seem like we kept Messi at bay. And I suppose credit needs to be attributed to the setup up until, the 75th minute, pretty much, when we just started to really sit back. He brought in the changes, the defense, and that's been commented on so much since that we don't really need to. Everyone knows of the issues with sitting back and allowing Argentina just to come, particularly given that they weren't able to do that for most parts of the game. So there's a lot of disappointment there. I think the big question then is, if you are looking to get rid of Tuchel, who do you bring in? Because to my mind, other managers potentially would have fallen at the Mexico and the Norway game. Whilst it's disappointing and whilst the final was within our grasps, I still think the way we played up until that point, and there's no defending his tactics when he started to really sit back and bring those changes on. But up until that point, let's say if he had continued and we just won 1-0, it'd be the biggest win since 1966, really, in the World Cup. So we was that close to actually him almost becoming one of the all-time great England managers, getting us to a final, beating Argentina. But it didn't happen. To my mind, just to replace him at this point, unless you're literally lining up a Pep Guardiola, I don't see there's anyone else really that can take the team any further than what Tuchel has. And he would have learned a lot from that game, this tournament. He's still, new to national team management as well. So you'd like to think we'll adapt, we'll sort of grow into it. So if we have him for the next tournament, hopefully he's learned his lessons, because if you do bring in someone fresh, obviously lots of people are saying Eddie Howe, but for me, you're just taking a risk again on an unproven international manager who really at club level hasn't really won anything either, apart from a League Cup in a team that 2 years ago was very exciting, had very high quality players, yet he wasn't able to take them where Newcastle really needed to be. So there's nothing about him that I think would give him a higher stake to replace Tuchel. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
Who would you be replacing? Because if you're making the case, you need to get rid of him tomorrow. Well, who's going to take them into the Nations League?
It's a fair point. As in, I do rather concur. If there's not an obvious successor, Occam's razor would be to keep him. I think you've clearly got Pep on the market. He was interviewed for the Italy manager job. If Pep wanted to step away in perpetuity, he wouldn't interview for this job. So Pep is on the market to some degree. So I think we should go out all out to get Pep personally. Secondly, I'd actually prefer someone like Eddie Howe. I mean, I'm not having any of this Lee Carsley nonsense that's coming out of some pundits' mouths, but with Eddie Howe, it's definitely one I would certainly have. You know, he understands the ethos of English football, which Tuchel doesn't. My critique of Tuchel would be as follows. I think he's an iteration of four-leaf clover boy Southgate here. I think he got every tactic wrong in every knockout game. So you look at Congo, he expected Congo to play like Ghana. They didn't. It was only Harry Kane's brilliance that saved us. You look at Mexico, we got lucky that they took off their best player, Quinones. They couldn't do anything from the right. If that had gone to extra time, we would have lost. We won it by pure luck, but that was 40 minutes against the wall. That was the players coming through. You look at Norway, that second half of normal time was an absolute abomination when he drops Bellingham into defensive midfield, puts Eze wide left, puts Reece James into centre midfield. I don't know what he was thinking. I will concur that he deserves some credit for the initial setup, although I wouldn't have started, even though he assisted. I don't think Rodgers was the right player. That game was calling out for Madwanke. If you're ever going to play Madwanke, it's to have the pace right there.
Stop right there. Before that game, when we did our predicted lineups and players we wanted to see, we both firmly agreed that this was the time for Rodgers. And I think a lot of people were saying the same. And then for you to say Madwanke out of everyone who you've been dissing all tournament.
I think Madwanke was the one to play. So Rodgers, fine, but off the bench, the fact he didn't bring on Madwanke or Saka, I think is just poor management, really. And to take off Gordon, who's got the pace and was causing a lot of trouble, keep on Rodgers and then go that 6-3-1 formation with Kane dropping. You would have probably taken Kane off as well, I imagine, or taken Rodgers off and brought a bit of pace on, I reckon.
Yeah, I think there was a moment in the game where Kane was very clearly ineffective. He wasn't really getting the ball. He was leggy. I was surprised that Watkins didn't really get a shout for most of the tournament. I think he offers something different, doesn't he? Because he's got the legs. He could have stretched the defence. Those out balls that weren't really reaching Kane, Watkins potentially could have got the space to get onto them. So that was a weird one. But again, we don't know what's happening in training. Watkins is a frustrating player. He's never really sort of given me satisfaction that, he is world class. I don't think anyone can say Watkins is world class. But I think what Tuchel was trying to do is replicate what we did against Mexico. We're 1-0 up, a goal up, sit back, but clearly that just played into Argentina's hand, because up until that point where they weren't creating chances, it gave them the space to create those chances and really played into their hands. But I would also make the point that surely the players themselves must look at themselves and said, why didn't particularly one of the more experienced players, surely one of them would have realized, look, lads, we're sitting far too deep here. We're literally getting assaulted from the right flank. Managers, of course, set the tactics and things, but surely in-game management, there you're relying on your experienced heads. And how the hell did the smallest player on the pitch win a header when we had Byrne, Stones, Concert all on the same pitch?
I agree. And honestly, what really irks me, and I get the point on Mexico, and there was a clear precedent he was following, I think wrongly, but there was a precedent there. The problem for me was we got to 1-1. I think Pickford should have done better personally with that. I think Pickford should have at least got a hand on it. But anyway, gets to 1-1, no change of tactics. We just let them have complete free reign for the next 7 minutes. It was bloody inevitable that they were going to create a number of more chances. I mean, McAllister hit the post before that goal after all, the Martinez one. And he only changed the tactics when we were 2-1 down. It was that was actually a Southgate moment from Tuchel, that he just froze right then at 1-1, and he needed to change the game. My view is Southgate has done well for England, to be fair. For all the criticism I've given him, the actual results he's done well. We don't want to do well, we want to win something. We've brought in Tuchel, who's a frosty character, to win something. He hasn't. He is actually, in my mind, his implosion has impacted the players, and the players have just unfortunately followed hither and
Yeah.
not done the right thing. And then to your point, and I know you're a fan of his, but Rice went off for whatever reason. He still played him on the Saturday, only a couple of games that are weird. And Reece James went off as well, injured, I guess. But I think we lost that bit of experience too.
The frustrating thing as well, which I would give credence to the argument about Tuchel getting rid of him, was hasn't really admitted fault either. He hasn't really taken any responsibility for it. And obviously the comment about English mentality in the DNA, that almost is a sackable effect in itself to some degree. But my case is, and I guess, there's been a lot of reflection since that game, is really, well, what next then? What are you suggesting? It's either get rid of him now and replacing with someone. If you've got no one lined up, then what you're thinking? And I'll make the point that let's keep him, see how he does in the Nations League. If there's a clear trouble in the team or if some of the tactics again are questionable, then you might look at it ahead of the next tournament, which is, of course, in UK and Ireland. The only other alternative, like you say, is Guardiola is available. Apparently he's interested. I would go for him, surely.
We have to.
Considering that.
Yeah, I think we have to. And I get the point that, okay, some would say Tuchel's come third, our best finish in 60 years, give him another go. But this is a home tournament. We're not going to have many better chances to win a tournament. I think for a long time, this will probably be Kane's last tournament. So there's no one coming through as well, because Tony and Watkins aren't much younger than Kane as well. So there's a worry for that position too. The next World Cup's going to be in Spain, huge favourites already as well, with parts of it in South America too. I think that's our best chance to win a tournament, that Euros. So I would go all in for the best manager we can. And if it costs 20 million to get Pep, who cares? I mean, I think every England fan listening would happily pay a couple of quid towards that, to get Pep. I'm sure Ken, for example, would happily chip in for that, our caller from before.
So it sounds like then we're actually in agreement, although you're obviously a bit more strongly in the Tuchel out camp. I'm more Tuchel only if we're getting someone like Pep Guardiola. But if we weren't able to get Pep Guardiola, where do we turn to then? Would you still say Tuchel out, or where would you be looking?
I mean, it was a controversial take that a lot of listeners commented on, but after the Norway game, I said Tuchel should be fired with immediate effect, actually, and we should have got someone in right then, because I thought Tuchel lost the dressing room with those very flippant comments. I think he doesn't have a clue about English DNA. If anything, that's a xenophobic comment as well. So as you say, sackable offence. I'd rather have Sam Bloody Allardyce as the England manager right now than Thomas Tuchel. That's my view. What about you?
Yeah, for me, it's Pep or no one else, to be honest. I mean, this might be a crazy one for you. I don't know what you think here. But Jurgen Klopp also would have been on the radar, but it looks like he's going to Germany. Okay. There is a third that it hasn't been touted at all, and he's probably not even in the market to want to get the job. But if you're talking about another manager that's won things, that knows English football, that actually, although he hasn't managed a national team, he's been in the FIFA area for a while, it's Arsene Wenger. I know that's... I
thought you were going to say John Terry then.
It's Arsene Wenger. I know that would be quite an outrageous one for a lot of listeners, and it's probably the Arsenal in me. And again, whether he actually wants to become a manager again. But, that's one I could probably open my ears to.
You get behind.
Yeah.
So how about this then? If this is a hypothetical, how would you feel as an Arsenal fan and as an England fan if they offered Arteta the role as a joint role? Because apparently they actually did this with Mourinho before it was either McLaren or Capello. They were offering him to do both roles at the same time, which is, I don't think, ever been done, at least for England anyway. Do you think could that be a viable one to get best in class? And could you get behind it?
Yeah, I don't think so. Was that when Mourinho was Chelsea manager, was it? So they
wanted Chelsea. Chelsea won.
Yeah. No, I don't see that. It'll be touting Arteta to get him to leave Arsenal. And to be fair, I don't think he would. Why would you? You've just brought a team back to the top of English football for the first time in 20 odd years and looking very solid in terms of the trajectory that we're on. Why would you leave for a team that hasn't won a trophy since 1966 that brings this almost, ghostly sort of experience from it? Every manager, even very reputable managers, have taken on that job and probably come out of the back of it in a worse position than they would when they joined. Probably arguably Southgate is an exception to that.
Yeah, I'd go Pep all in. If the only way would be all the money on the table is Pep not wanting to come back. So Pep all in. If not, I'm happy with Eddie Howe. I honestly, I'd rather take Lampard or anyone than
Yeah, I
Tuchel.
mean,
So
I actually would fancy Lampard over Eddie Howe. To me, the Eddie Howe one is, I don't really see, to my reckoning, Eddie Howe with big players. Yes, he's managed to get a team going, but there was a period 3, 4 years ago when I was looking at the Newcastle team and they were looking in a better position than Arsenal were.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I know they've had their issues, financial fair play, but he has had a lot of big players leave Newcastle as well. So I would actually question, can he manage big egos, big teams, the big occasion? Yes, they won the League Cup, but as we mentioned before, Tuchel won the Champions League and 2 reputable league titles. So I honestly don't, unless you're going down the argument of we need an English manager, that's another argument. If we are going down the argument of we need an English manager, I would probably prefer someone that's actually had international tournament experience, albeit not as a manager, but as a player, and probably look towards a Frank Lampard because he's a likable character. He's quite ruthless, he can be snappy when he needs to be and has a strong personality. And I think he would be able to actually manage the egos more so than an Eddie Howe.
yeah, I mean, Lampard I'd be fine with, but sort of to conclude this segment. But honestly, knowing the FA as we do, they'll probably get rid of Tuchel and get in Liam Rossini.
Oh, jeez.
You know,
I mean, that would be changing. I'm Italian. I'm Italian after that. Changing my passport.
I give up if that's the case. But yeah, so I think great tournament on the whole. It's a bit, I think, just a sort of wider reflection on the tournament. I think it was clouded by 2 things. Firstly, I'm going to say Infantino rather than Trump. Infantino debacle with Balogun's red card and rescinding that. And then, to be honest, the World Cup final for me was very unsightly and didn't do much for the game either. If you think of a casual fan watching it, if people getting their partner to watch it, they're not going to get many new fans as a result.
Yeah.
So they were probably my 2 kind of sticking points of the tournament. What about yourself?
Yeah, and I suppose there was that undercurrent as well of Argentina getting favourable decisions throughout the tournament, which I usually try not to sort of read too much into. But when you actually dig deep into, certainly even in the England game, the Jed Spence foul that Messi, it was a foul. And if you compare that to the decision they got in the fixture before, where VAR brought it all the way back to an earlier incident, you do sort of question that. So I think the point at which VAR gets intervened into the game was very questionable and inconsistent across the tournament. I would almost rather setting the scene from the start, which it looked like they did, that they'll only bring in VAR in very extreme circumstances. It's very clear that there has been a missed decision. But then that strictness started to become a bit more lenient as they went through. But then you could argue that all past tournaments have had some sort of dodgy decisions and it's part of the game. But I suppose since we've got this technology now, VAR, really that should be wiping out these sort of bad feelings, and it hasn't. It's just the same, basically.
Yeah, I agree. I put it as a good tournament on the whole, but if I'm looking at, I think the group stages were actually fairly fun. Lots of goals. All the big players came to the party. It may even be the format and the amount of games. I do think that as we got further in the tournament, the games, even think of the England-Norway one. That wasn't a classic at all. The France-Morocco. Argentina, they didn't really have the bite that you would, but maybe because they're playing far more games than previously. I think the best game I watched for me was that England-Mexico game, which will be well remembered for quite some time in the Azteca. What's more of a question, maybe one for us to think about, but on the golden ball, I think there are probably 3 or 4 candidates for that. So obviously Rodri won it, and Rodri's been a great player and orchestrated that Spanish midfield. I guess you could have also, in theory, given it to Messi, Mbappe, or a Bellingham as well. It was probably purely the victory, really, for Spain.
As is usually the case, though, isn't it? It's usually the same with the Ballon d'Or. Let's say the best player in the world didn't win anything that year. It's very difficult for them to win the Ballon d'Or, as is the case for tournament individual trophies like this one. But I think really it was the Spain's defensive setup that won the tournament for them, and Rodri's a massive part of that. They didn't have let's say, a star striker or someone that was scoring all the goals. They shared it equally pretty much across the team, which was, it should be applauded really, because Spain have obviously got their system very coordinated, and they're just churning out very good players. And Rodri, I guess, I suppose as a holding midfielder as well, it's quite nice to see that it's a holding midfielder that's getting all the plaudits. Usually it's a striker or a winger, I wouldn't necessarily say that's a bad thing. For me, Rodri, I think Messi had a good shout for it. Mbappe, because you shouldn't forget how absolutely breathtaking he was in the early group stage games. Sometimes when it gets to the end of the tournament, you only really remember the quarterfinal and semi-final. Same with Elise, he probably faded throughout the tournament, but don't forget what an absolute star baller he was early in the group stages. And then I think if you're looking at England, Bellingham probably gets the nod against Kane, because he just did it over more of the games.
It's a funny one that actually, the way it's worked out possibly sets up Kane for the Ballon d'Or in a way, because he had a great season. Obviously, they didn't win the Champions League. England now haven't won the World Cup, but because Spain haven't, I think if Yamal had fired, he'd win the Ballon d'Or. But Yamal's probably the only star player, even including Ronaldo. Yamal, 1 goal, 1 assist, and that was in the first 10 minutes against Saudi, and nothing else since, which is amazing, frankly. I think because Rodri's had a bit of a bit part season for City, injuries still in it, so I don't think it can be Rodri as well. So probably Kane with the stellar season, stellar World Cup on the whole, 6 goals. I think he's currently bookmakers' favourite to win it. So fingers crossed.
If they go down a traditional approach, remember players like Jorginho, who came third when Italy won the Euros because Chelsea won the Champions League. So then you're looking at Fabio Ruiz potentially, because he's won the Champions League, the French league, and the World Cup. I mean, could Cucurella get in the top 5 or 10? Has anyone actually won the Club World Cup and the World Cup in pretty much the same year, wasn't it?
They'd be the only one, wouldn't they? Yeah. You're giving a free shirt away if there's any.
We've already given 1 shirt away, I think. That's enough for this series.
Cucurella could be in a shout. Fabian Ruiz. I mean, hopefully Kane is the one for it, but let's see in terms of that. And I guess just moving on as well briefly for the season ahead. Bit of transfer talk at the moment. Arsenal are looking very strong. If they get Vinny and Bruno, Bruno Guimaraes, what do you think that would do for the team?
I think Bruno one is very exciting. You're getting a player there that's at his peak. He's 28. He's got Premier League experience. He's been Newcastle's best player now for best part of 3 seasons. He's got fight in him, and he should be competing at the highest stage. So I think for him, it makes a lot of sense. And for us, he's a starter. He's a starter for Arsenal. It'd be interesting to see how he fits in, because for me, Bruno, for Newcastle, he's played the 8 role pretty well. Earlier on when he was at Newcastle, I think he did the 6 as well. He was playing quite deep at some time. And then for Brazil, we're seeing him as a number 10. So I think he can actually play all 3 of those positions. His number 8 is probably his best role, but obviously we've got Declan there. I think it would depend on if any other transfer activity happens in terms of out. So I know Zubamendi it's a very weird one, Zubamendi, because he did have a decent 3 quarters of the season, then sort of dipped off and wasn't played. So I don't know if it's like a personal thing that's happening there. I get the sense it might be. So potentially they're offloading him, and then it's a case of, well, do you drop Rice as our main holding midfielder potentially, and then Rice, Bruno, and then whoever's playing number 10. We've obviously got Odegaard, we've got Eze, got Marino, who can all do a good job there. Wanyeri. So I think midfield wise, bringing Bruno in, irrespective of whether Zubimendi leaves or not, it's a great signing. And we do need a world class left winger. I think for 3 seasons now, we've lacked a threat on the left, and that's where a lot of our games been played through the right, through Saka, for example. If we had someone equivalent to Saka, or if you're looking at Vinny, arguably better, then all of a sudden our front three starts looking very exciting. And any half decent number 9 in the world, when they've got Vinny to the left, Saka to the right, has to be scoring 25 plus goals a season in the Premier League. And to be fair to Gyökeres, I think actually when you break down his season last year, first season in an Arsenal shirt, his figures weren't that bad, really. And hopefully he can continue and grow there. And I'll be quite happy with that if we get Bruno and Vinny. If we don't get Vinny, I know we're sort of in for Alvarez as well. But then you start questioning, well, does that mean Gyökeres is dropped? So there's a lots of if this, then this sort of thing. But it's great as an Arsenal fan to be linked to players that are at their peak for next season, world class already. They can pretty much get into our starting lineup. In previous seasons, it's been usually one player we bring in that's actually impacting the starting 11, and then sort of backup players, which ultimately won us the league because our squad depth was so great last year. But this feels different. It's like almost Vergi of the United years, always bringing in at least one that's actually going to guarantee starting the team. And I'll be very happy if we get Bruno and Vinny or Bruno and Alvarez as an example.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, just my thoughts on that, and I'll touch on United too. But if you could keep Zubamendi, in theory, you could even play Guimaraes as a 10 as well and drop Odegaard or play Marino or Guimaraes and sort of swap that around. And then I think the good news for Arsenal fans, I've seen that Madrid are heavily now linked with Diomande, the Ivorian left winger, who's, great talent. He was going to go to PSG. If he goes to Madrid, surely the money there is the Vinny money and so forth. So I could see that as a positive sign. For United, I mean, we've had two big signings so far. Santos, so still needs to be proven, but I think Santos, from what I've seen, is better than Ederson, where the deal fell apart. So I'm kind of happy we've got him. Ederson had a little cameo against Norway that fans may have seen and was absolutely atrocious, failed his medical. So we've done well to move on from that one. On the other hand, Tielemans is a magnificent signing for me for 35 million. Belgium captain, proven Premier League experience at Leicester, winning the FA Cup, great goal in the final, winning the Europa League for Villa, being pretty much their star player there. I think that for the price tag is a wonderful signing. So similar to Guimaraes, he'll slot right in for us as well, probably alongside May with Bruno in front. So I think maybe just a little bit more in defence we need as well, and possibly a backup or competition for Sesko as well, unless we play Kun there. But I mean, a lot of people are saying to me, what do you do with Rashford? And I really don't know if they're going to integrate him. Would you take Rashford for United or even Arsenal?
I think if I'm a United fan, so long as his mentality was there, I'd probably be looking to keep him. The difficulty is there's not many suitors for him, so I don't think you'd actually get too much. So you probably have to lose him for 30 million, maybe, if you're lucky. 20 million, potentially. I don't know. I can't imagine him going for much beyond that, given his high wages and his inconsistently, ultimately. Like, he hasn't been consistent for a number of seasons now. And he's obviously had injury problems as well. So would I take him for Arsenal? I think it would actually, if Arsenal end up going for Rashford, which could happen, it would probably mean we've failed on recruiting a decent left winger. And it's almost like, we do need another left winger. I know we've signed the Greek guy, but we've lost Trossard, who was a reliable goal scorer for us. and Martinelli, there's frustrations there. Could see him potentially going as well. So we do need a world class left winger. For me, Rashford didn't show enough in the World Cup. It was a really great chance for him, really, in the World Cup to almost say, yes, I'm still there, still can do what I used to. But I think it's telling, really, that Barcelona got rid of him and then bought Claire Balding for 80 odd million. That's probably telling enough.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, completely. I think we'd probably play him because for 320 grand the wage, we're not going to be able to sell him. And he is an option.
Yeah.
Then you could play Cunha as a false nine as well. So I think we'll probably end up keeping him, see how he does, and he might end up going on a free otherwise. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to the season. And for this podcast, we're going to do regular episodes at least weekly or even twice a week in terms of transfer news, in terms of Premier League predictions. We'll do our bold predictions for the season ahead coming up too, and then also get a few more callers on the line as well. And we're even hearing from some of our original callers wanting to call back. So there's quite a lot of clamour as well in the comments section. So please keep commenting, please keep liking, subscribing. Best of Rivals. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube. We have got TikTok if you're that way inclined too. So thank you as always for listening to us whittle away, and we look forward to hearing from you next time. So thanks a lot and ciao, ciao.